The moment the second child is born is when a massive change comes crashing in. The firstborn child can immediately experience an extremely frightening and confusing feeling. That feeling is almost exactly like they have just been completely replaced emotionally. What is the worst part of this entire process of profound psychological transformation? Almost all parents in the world unintentionally make a very big mistake. They unintentionally punish the very behaviors that are trying to express their child's pain. The older child suddenly starts wetting the bed again, even though they have already been toilet trained. They may have violent fits of rage even though they passed that age a long time ago. They may even stand there, look deep into your eyes, and say clearly that they hate the baby. What you are about to hear next will completely change the way you look at every one of those moments. Because deep inside the brain of the firstborn child, a real change is taking place. Something that can be measured with scientific equipment is controlling the child. Neuroscience researchers today are now able to track this entire process accurately. The most surprising thing is that it has almost nothing to do with ordinary jealousy. For many months before that, you spent countless hours preparing for the baby's arrival. You talked endlessly with the older child about becoming a sibling and constantly offered reassurance. You looked deep into your child's eyes and whispered that mommy still loves you exactly the same, nothing has changed. But then that fateful day officially arrives and turns everything upside down when the front door opens. The firstborn child immediately changes personality completely and shows extremely strange behaviors. They suddenly become clingy to you and refuse to let go even for one short minute. They cry extremely easily over tiny things and show regressive behaviors like an infant. They become angry, irritable, and ready to smash the objects around them uncontrollably. One mother once shared a very heartbreaking story with our researchers about this. Her son bluntly asked her to throw the newborn baby into the trash without mercy. She cried for a full hour after hearing that cruel sentence from her child. If you have ever gone through a similar moment, you will understand the depth of that truly terrifying feeling. That moment makes you ask yourself what kind of terrible person your child is becoming. This transition is extremely powerful psychologically for any child. However, it is also very easy for parents to misread the signals and misunderstand them seriously. The firstborn child is old enough to feel this enormous loss, but they are still too young to truly understand the root of what is happening. They completely cannot accurately name what has just happened to their peaceful life. They cannot explain why the home suddenly feels completely different and empty. They cannot say in words that the familiar emotional rhythm of the family has disappeared forever. So they are forced to communicate in the only way a small child can. They express all their disappointment and fear through daily negative behaviors to attract attention. You may have viewed those behaviors only as the jealousy of a selfish child. You may think they are deliberately manipulating you psychologically to demand the attention they used to have. You may believe they are intentionally resisting you for no reason and being extremely stubborn. In reality, you are only reading the surface translation of a very deep message buried underneath. There is a complex neurological story hidden beneath those oppositional behaviors. Most parents are never given any explanation about this core truth by anyone. Every change begins right at the moment the door opens and the baby is carried into the house. Think back to how wonderful the firstborn child's life used to be before the baby. For many years, they were the only and most important existence in your small family. Perhaps for their entire conscious life, this world was built to revolve only around them. You always responded immediately whenever they cried out demanding something from adults. You held them through long, endless, sleepless nights and reflected every emotion back to them. You made them the center of gravity of the entire home and gave them all the best things. In the developing brain of the child, love has a very clear and simple definition. Love feels consistent, predictable, and like absolute safety that cannot be replaced. Then after only one short night, everything completely collapses before the child's eyes in an extremely cruel way. Scientific studies have carefully examined the transition when a new baby appears in the family. The results show that many firstborn children have a clear change in stress levels. This increase can be completely measured with modern, specialized medical devices. They become more clingy, sleep is disrupted, aggression increases, and emotional balance is lost. All of these bad things happen within only 2 to 4 weeks after the new baby is born. Even when the transition appears very smooth on the outside, the brain inside is still reacting intensely. It is a very real neural response that comes from a change in the attachment environment. The stress response neural circuitry immediately begins operating at full capacity to protect the body. The brain reads the sudden change in parental availability as a real danger. Cortisol hormone levels in the body immediately surge in response to that sense of danger. This cortisol increase is completely measurable and acts like an alarm bell. The child's ability to regulate emotions drops severely, causing the nervous system to shift into an alarm state. You may sometimes wonder whether you accidentally did something wrong in the parenting process. You fear that your excitement for the new baby has communicated a wrong message to the older child. The truth is that you did nothing wrong. The problem lies in the way the child's brain processes change. The baby finally falls asleep after 40 minutes of crying, making the house extremely quiet. And then from the next room, a sharp sound of toys being slammed rings out, feeling very intentional. You are seeing a child whose brain has run out of words and must use an automatic coping strategy. The firstborn child begins acting like a younger child by using baby talk and wetting themselves. Your first instinct is to immediately correct those behaviors by reminding them that they are grown up now. This reaction from you is completely understandable, but it unintentionally causes an extremely serious opposite effect. Imagine your child standing still and watching you feed the baby for 30 uninterrupted minutes. They see the baby's helplessness being rewarded with absolute closeness from you. As they watch you do those things, the mirror network in their brain is continuously activating strongly. They can almost feel that closeness themselves, but in reality, they are not receiving it. The child's brain records a very simple pattern that newborn babies receive closeness. The firstborn child does not yet have a fully developed prefrontal cortex to reassure themselves. They cannot ask you for reassurance in words, so they choose to wet themselves and speak in a high-pitched baby voice. What looks like resistance from the outside is actually a cry for help from the inside. This regression is the brain's way of asking for the familiar attachment conditions it once relied on before. Trying only to fix the outside behavior is exactly like removing a fire alarm system because the sound is too piercing. Sometimes the firstborn child may push the baby over or hover too close with a strange look in their eyes. Horror rushes in along with a heavy sense of guilt, making you afraid to leave the older child alone. This spiral of fear is extremely cruel, and almost no one dares to talk openly about it. For a very young child, parental attention is recorded as an absolute survival resource. The attachment neural circuit does not clearly distinguish between "I want this" and "I need this to stay regulated." The older child deliberately pours an entire cup of water onto the floor slowly while looking straight into your eyes. This action is not cruelty at all. It is because the amygdala in the brain has been activated. Their brain is asking a very primitive question of why the baby gets everything. This fear travels through a nervous system that is not yet equipped enough to control it, so it turns into aggression. Buried deep beneath all those oppositional behaviors is a pleading message. "Mummy, please do not forget me." The children who react the loudest are not always the ones struggling most deeply psychologically. The child who is most concerning is the one who has completely stopped asking for anything and quietly disappeared. While the entire home is spinning around the new baby, the older child suddenly becomes extremely easygoing. On the outside, they may seem to have adapted perfectly to the change, making you begin to breathe a sigh of relief. But this withdrawal behavior is truly dangerous, because the child has completely suppressed the need to seek attachment. They become excessively independent because actively seeking help begins to feel unsafe. A child who learns not to ask for too much is actually a child who has completely stopped trusting connection. If you have a child who suddenly becomes extremely agreeable, you should spend time sitting quietly beside them. You need to understand that the child is still within a window of time when every injury can be repaired in time. The first strategy is called the 10-minute transition, where you spend time playing with your child without distraction. These 10 minutes of absolute focus will be recorded differently and recalibrate the entire nervous system. The second strategy is to validate emotions before correcting behavior, to remove the fear inside the child's mind. Restore predictability wherever you can by protecting familiar routines. These routines continuously send strong signals that your child's world still maintains a stable structure. Let your child find their own place beside the baby and acknowledge that moment with sincere words. Identity and belonging are the two core things the child is desperately searching for beside the new baby. The firstborn child does not need you to split love perfectly. They only need continuous reassurance. A newborn baby changes the entire emotional world of a family in many different ways. You are not a perfect parent, but you are a parent who is paying careful attention. When you learn how to look through the behavior to see the fear, the child will immediately stop fighting. The firstborn child has not simply gained a younger sibling, they have just lost their old life. The deep bond between the two children depends entirely on whether the older child feels protected or not.